So we're here to do a very informal celebration of Kendrick Frazier, who just passed last November, and honored to see all our distinguished attendees here. So I've got some pictures. It's going to take me a little bit to convert them over, but let me share my screen. And okay, and I'll pop over to these pictures. Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay. All right. We'll just try the Macintosh slideshow. Okay, I hope everybody can hear me okay. We'll be great to sort of go around, give everybody a chance to say something. Oh dear. Okay, here we I'm just trying to get over to where I've got these pictures. Okay. No name. Okay. Okay, that's the chat. Here we go. Okay, here we go. Tools. I think I can just advance them manually. Yeah. So here we go. Here is Ken at the recent SciCon, not the last one, but I think about 4 years ago in Las Vegas. Pretty fun convention. Got some more pictures from that coming up. Here is Mark Boslow and Ruth and Ken. I think this is at the jousting event that we saw there in Las Vegas. That was very interesting, kind of fun. There is James Randi and Ken doing the interview at SciCon, a great little and memorable interview. One of my favorites, this is Ken and Ruth. Ken is Schrodinger. I think I can zoom in a little bit. Oh, here's where, yeah, here we go. Yeah, you can see he's got the bow tie, the Schrodinger, and Ruth has the Wanted Dead or Alive. Okay, we've got Kim is here. Okay. Wanted Schrodinger's Cat Reward. Yeah. So that was a good one. Okay. I think I have to shrink down again. Okay, we'll go back to manual. Here is Mick West, who is a great UFO debunker and chemtrails, and he's written some great articles for CSI on that, and he's done some great work on the new batch of UAP videos, Navy videos that supposedly show aliens, but they really don't. And that's Ken and Mick chatting. Nice promo photo of Ken. This is from in September of, I believe it's 2019. Ken gave a great talk about his visit with Ruth to all sorts of great spots in Europe, the Downhouse, and Hume's grave. And so that was a great lecture, and he really showed his passion for, just basically people who, the pioneers of the scientific method, as it were. Okay. Here is Ken with James Randi at one of the talks at that SciCon. And another with Ken and Randy. Okay, good smile there. And another, this is the Halloween contest. Ruth, do you remember, did you guys win a prize for that?
She's muted.
She's muted. Okay. I've asked to unmute.
Yeah. We were judges.
You were judges, so it wouldn't
Yeah.
you couldn't pull a Clarence Thomas and be judging yourself. That's good. Okay, but you were worthy of a prize. That's for sure. Okay. All righty. And so I think I have to manually skip to the next one. Here's a great lineup with Ken Frazier and just on the tip of my tongue, one of our CSI folks,
Ron Lindsay.
Lindsay, that's the one. And then Steve,
Novella.
Novella, yeah, the medical blogger, Bill Nye the Science Guy, and of course Jeannie Scott. Yeah. Let's see who else I've got. This is from that talk Ken gave just a couple of years ago. This was back at I think the upstairs of CNM, and that upstairs room we met in for a while. So that was a stirring talk. Got some good photos of that. This is from that talk, Ken, at the Downhouse, and I believe this is Kepler, the Kepler Museum.
Right.
Okay, here's somebody else coming in. Oh, all righty. And I think, oh no, I've got some more. Paul Kurtz and Ken back in the day.
That's in China.
Oh yeah, China, yeah. Marvelous. And here is Ruth and Ken at Hume's grave. I just love to watch Ken and Ruth's travels on Facebook. I just was amazed at all the places they got to, and just love to vicariously join along in the travels. Here's Ken at the Downhouse with the God issue of Skeptical Inquirer, and the little Charles Darwin Christmas ornament, very very timely for this time of year. Alrighty, and this was the panel that several of us were in. So I see that Leonard Tremille's on the left, and that's me, and I'm just having
It's Ray Hyman.
Hyman, of course, Ray, the great Ray Hyman, and Jeannie Scott, Ken, and not sure who's next to Ken. Let's zoom in there. That was an interesting.
Maybe
Harriet,
I'm not sure.
Harriet Hall.
Yeah, that's Harriet Hall.
And
Yeah.
Got Lilienfeld.
yeah, and
Amartyo.
yeah,
Amartyo, yeah. Sorry.
Deo and Stephen Novella again, and
Barry Carr.
Barry Carr. Yeah, excellent. All righty. So I think that's not my photo. Several of these are mine. Some the Europe ones, of course, are probably Ruth's. And this is at when Michael Shermer came out, and several of us were at that. Kim Johnson and Ben Radford and myself and Ken. That was a fun talk that Shermer gave, and that is a signed copy of Paul Kurtz's book that he gave Ken there. Murray Gilman, the three quirks from Muster Mark Pioneer, up in the, and here's a picture of Newton there.
That was at the Santa Fe Institute.
Santa Fe Institute, yeah. And a tiny picture of Ken and Randy. Ruth at the Darwin home. Oh, great picture there. And so that is my pictures. So I'd love it if somebody else would take a turn. If you have pictures, I can make you a co-host and you can share. I should check email and make sure that everybody that wanted to get in was able to get in. But yeah, if somebody wants to say something or have some pictures to share, we can do both.
I've got a picture here,
Okay.
actually several, but share screen.
Yeah. So is this Kimber?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So let me find you. Here we go. And co-host. You have the
Okay.
power.
All right.
Oh, no, you don't have it. Now you have it.
Now I have it. That background picture is of Korai ruins, which
Well,
Ken-
you're not sharing yet. So
I'm just saying the background picture there was of Ken or Kim. And this one, if it'll go, there we go.
yeah, we're seeing you now. Hey, excellent.
Okay. This is Carrie Sager, who is Jeannie Scott's daughter, Jessie. And I don't remember who this is, but I know who it is. There's Ruth in the background. There's Ken. And we were meeting to go to the Guadalupe ruins, which were the easternmost Anasazi ruins that have been discovered. And this was back, and it was before 2011. And Jeannie and Carrie had come out. And Ruth, do you remember that?
Oh, very much. It was a wonderful trip.
Yeah, and the Guadalupe ruins, if you don't know, are up by let me see, Cabazon is the closest thing I can think of that you might know. And then you have to go down, cross the Rio Puerto and head on down, and it's past a little ghost town of Guadalupe, and finally you get there, and it's a pretty cool place. And they're not well publicized. Let me see, and stand by.
Oh.
Let me see if I can find, here are more pictures of it. And here's one, that's with Carrie going up. There's a dike, a marvelous volcanic dike up there. And I'm not sure who that is. Ruth may know. Let's see, and this is the dike, and this leads up, if you can see, up to the Guadalupe ruins. And Ken was one of the people that really understood that. And his marvelous book on Chaco Canyon included a short discussion of Guadalupe ruins. And everybody buy it if you can find it. You remember what the name of it is, Ruth?
It's called People of Chaco.
People of Chaco. There you go.
And it was
Bingo.
first published in 1986, but it had a second publishing then and has continued to sell, particularly out at Chaco Canyon.
Absolutely.
Marvelous.
Yeah, one more. I think that's Ruth. So there you go. And there's a little thing here, but it's difficult to get to. If anybody wants to go see it, I advise it, and let me know, or let Ruth know, or somebody, and we'll get you directions. Okay, that's it.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
You're
Great.
welcome. You want me to give it back to you, or you just?
Yeah, or just stop the screen sharing.
There you go.
Yeah, does anybody else have some pictures or anything to share?
I'm not sure everyone has seen the January, February skeptical, which just arrived at our house, but there's a lovely Ken's last column is in it. And then what I found amazing was that the back cover, and Ben, you can talk about this one too. Ken, as you might recall, always pulled a Webb telescope or a Hubble telescope for the back cover. He loved any of the latest astronomy pictures. But the magazine, in honor of him, posted a picture of Ken's of a lone buffalo from our trip this just a month, truly a month before he died. So I thought that was very fitting, the lone buffalo out in the field, which explained Ken often in talking about the topics you all love so much about. Sometimes you feel like you are a lone voice in the wilderness. So I like the picture of the buffalo.
Yeah, I don't have any photos to share other than I'll just follow up with what Ruth said. You know, at SI, of course, we were trying to figure out the right way to honor Ken and to sort of, you know, there was some discussion, do we have him on the cover? And honestly, we felt like he would be uncomfortable with that. Even though really Julie and I sort of thought that he should be on the cover, but he said, you know, Ken wouldn't want that, so God damn it, we'll leave him off the cover. But
Right.
but we did get there's some great photos of him inside, and then as Ruth mentioned, the really beautiful one of the bison stuff. So I don't want to take up much time. I just want to say that, you know, it's you know, just having worked with Ken for 25 years, and it's weird to even say that because it seems he was just so easy to work with and so easy to get along with, and it was just working with him was just great because it was just bouncing ideas back and forth, and he was always, you know, he would always want to, you know, get different input and weigh things, and he felt I experienced this the first time I met Carl Sagan was he's genuinely listening to you. He really wants to hear what you're saying. It's not this sort of dismissive, oh, so something about yourself. Okay, by the way, he's genuinely engaged and interested and wants to, and loves ideas. And that's just what I really enjoyed about Ken, sometimes to the detriment. It was on occasion we would have, I think in SI we had 4 or 5 times when there was somebody had written some article and somebody else was pissed off about it. And Ken always wanted to make sure that we published, you know, the rejoinder to it. I'm like, Ken, we come out 6 times a year. We can't, and he's like, no, we need to make sure that I'm like, no, we don't like, this is, you know, but he's like, no, like, let them have the rebuttal. And I'm like, Ken, come on, but anyway, but that was Ken wanting to make sure everybody had their fair share. And as much as I admire that. So anyway, it just, you know, it's a shame that so many SI readers only know him through his editorial notes, because as we all know, he was a writer, he was a researcher, he would send photos of things up at his cabin, right? Half the time, yeah, I get an email from Ken, I'm thinking this has to do with some article I'm editing. No, it's a photo of a bear, because of course it is, right? Because of course it is. So anyway, I'll leave it at that, but I just, it was just wonderful being part of SI, and especially with Ken for so long. So with that, I'll leave.
Thanks, Ben.
And knowing Ken for many years, but not anywhere near as closely as Ben, has been just an incredible pleasure. I guess I first got to know him without realizing that that's what I was doing, as a subscriber to, well, my two favorite science magazines are Science News and Skeptical Inquirer.
Wow.
And they have something in common. They're the wonderful concern and deep appreciation of what science is and how it should be reported. Just typified Ken incredibly well, and his integrity in that is unmatchable. But as Ben said, that's easy to get by reading his editor's notes and by seeing the results of his work. But his kindness and concern and genuine warmth as a human, we all miss.
Yeah, I could speak to his kindness. I first came to Albuquerque in November of '79. That's 43 years ago, almost half of my life. And I was apparently practically a charter subscriber to Skeptical Inquirer. I'm looking at my latest issue, and it says this is the 46th volume. So I presume it started about 1977. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I came to Albuquerque. I was an avid reader already, and I somehow knew that Ken lived here, and I looked him up somewhere in the first year that I was here, and he was just so kind. He told me that there were some guys and gals who were interested in starting something here, and then I believe he got in touch with me when it began to come together.
I remember Ken was very eager to have the group here in New Mexico be called that which he felt he stood for, New Mexicans for Science and Reason. So it was very easy to get into the negative debunking and all of that stuff. But boy, that's not what Ken led with. Ken led with Science and Reason.
Remember, we almost got called the Enchanted Skeptic.
Close.
Fun.
I remember we had a meeting at the museum, Natural History Museum, and that was our very first meeting. And my recollection is that Ken sent a postcard out to everyone in the Albuquerque area that was a subscriber to Skeptical Inquirer. So we each got a postcard from Ken saying he would like to start a group and setting up a meeting in the museum where I think a lot of us met each other there for the first time. And I kind of remember having a discussion about what we should call ourselves. And, you know, I'm sure Ken led that destruction, Ken led that conversation, and we ended up, he ended up steering us towards being for something as opposed to being, you know, skeptics. We're for Science and Reason.
Well, I think it was an excellent choice.
And I became a subscriber of Skeptical Inquirer because when I started at Sandia in '83, one of the things I did every year on my birthday was, well, it's my birthday, I don't want to work, but I don't want to take the day off. And so I would spend the day at the tech library at Sandia, just browsing. And I found the Skeptical Inquirer there. I'd heard of it, but I hadn't subscribed. And I don't know what year that was. I don't know when you moved here, Ruth, and when Ken started at Sandia, but I'm guessing it was sometime. Ken was probably responsible for getting Skeptical Inquirer at the Sandia Tech Library.
Right. we moved here in 74, and I think he actually started at Sandia. Gee, I should look. Maybe as early as 75, but he was editing the magazine even then.
Okay.
My,
And I was a subscriber to Science News as well for during those years, but I never made the connection, and I don't think I made the connection that he was also the Lab News. So there were three publications that I read that, not in an overlapping way, that he was editor of all of them, but during the time he was editor of all three of those, I was a reader of every issue.
my introduction to Skeptical Inquirer came back because of Cold Fusion, which came out in '83, and I was really interested in that. If that worked, that would have been just wonderful. But of course, it didn't quite work out, and a little skepticism was warranted. And then I noticed my dad had this magazine, Skeptical Inquirer, with an article about Cold Fusion, and this was after the debacle, and I said, hey, I'd like to borrow that and check it out. So I did, and then there was another article by Philip Klass about the Majestic 12 group that reverse engineered the Roswell UFO, and Philip Klass had found that the signature that the MJ12 people used to fake their top secret memo was actually from the National Archives in a letter to Truman, from Truman actually, and that impressed me because I had just seen on Unexplained Mysteries with Robert Stack how they were drooling over Majestic 12. This proves that something sinister is happening, and the government's not telling us everything they know, and that was fresh in my mind. So I said, wow, this magazine looks at all these strange claims like Cold Fusion, Majestic 12. I'm in. And it was a few years later that Skeptical Inquirer, I guess Psychop at the time, had a get together in Albuquerque and invited the readership, and so I showed up and had some funny Weekly World News clips that I thought a bunch of skeptics would be interested in sharing. Didn't really know that there was an Albuquerque group, but that's when I got introduced to Ken and John Gohegan and the Albuquerque group, and John persuaded me to give a talk on creationism, and then next thing I knew, I was in the group. So, but Ken was instrumental in starting the Mexicans for Science and Reason, and I think all through the years we've debunked stuff. We've had a few wacky guests. We had an astrologer who claimed that he had a physics-based explanation for astrology, and no, he sure didn't. And we had Paul Gamble, the sort of intelligent design creationist, up for a debate, and we had one flat earther. That was wild. But for the most part, our speakers have been people promoting, the neat, genuine science that's all over New Mexico.
We had the Shroud of Turin guy. I remember that one. And we had what's his name? The old the Tonight, the guy who started the Tonight Show. I'm blanking on his name.
Johnny Carson?
Before him, the first guy, the very
Jeff
first.
Barr?
Oh, Steve Allen.
Oh,
Steve Allen.
Allen.
We had Steve
Oh, that
Allen.
wasn't an NMSR thing. I think that was
Wasn't it an NMSR thing? He was wasn't he a CSI fellow?
He was, but that NMSR joined in, but I don't think we ran that event.
Okay.
But yeah, Steve Allen
No,
was a marvelous skeptic.
And we had Jeannie Scott, of course.
Yeah, Jeannie said anything yet? I don't think so. Maybe she doesn't want to. You know, the thing I remember about Ken the most was he was interested in everything and was never rude to anyone. It was just this personality that just encompassed everybody. And he didn't, I don't think he made anybody feel bad. Now, Ruth may have a different opinion than that, but he was just so encompassing and so kind to everyone. And so broad in everything he did, from the Chaco Canyon to Cold Fusion to everything. I don't know if I don't know many people like him in the world anymore. What a gift he was.
For those of you who knew the Sheltons, Nancy and Jerry, they supposedly got together because they discovered each of them had complete issues of skeptical inquirer. And that's what brought them together, is that common thing.
Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what Nancy told me once.
Wow.
Me neither. And they got married.
Yeah.
So, something else Ken did.
I can tell you a little kindness anecdote. Ken and I were in Scotland, and we were staying in an Airbnb in Aberdeen, Inverness, one of those places up. So there. And Ken got very friendly with the owner of the house. And I think it was more a B&B, not Airbnb, because there was a couple there. And they really started talking skeptical stuff. And the guy was wild about it. And Ken always had a copy of Skeptical. So he, of course, gave it immediately to the Scot. And they were having a great chat. And I noticed the wife was wringing her hands behind her husband and looking really disturbed. And I kind of nudged Ken, and Ken looked at her and said, "Oh, excuse me, are you okay?" And she said, "I'm not." And he said, "Why not?" And she said, "I'm having nightmares that are real." And Ken said, "Tell me more." And the woman said, "My mother is appearing every night in my dreams, and it's real. She's there, she's in my room." And Ken said, "Is this pleasant for you?" And the woman said, "Absolutely not. We had a terrible relationship. And I really, really am so unhappy that I'm being tormented by her spirit." And Ken paused and said, "You know, it's a very common human response. And especially if there were issues that weren't resolved." And he said, "Do you know that if indeed you feel like it's a dream, that you can stop the dream or you can change the dream?" And he said, "I don't have it with me, but we've written about that in Skeptical Inquirer." And the woman, you would have thought he had just come in and cured her of some horrible disease. And she said, "I can stop it." And Ken said, "You can stop it. You can say, you can wake yourself up, or you can change the dream in some way by thinking seriously about it." And the man, of course, had probably said things like this to his dear wife, but not in the kind way that Ken did. So I stood back and just watched him sort of turn into not the man interested in astronomy and geophysics and all those kinds of things, but the man with a heart that saw this woman was tortured.
He knew a lot and he cared so much.
Just cared, yeah.
So I have a picture that I got sent from by Richard Saunders.
Ah.
It's a picture of Ken. Well, let me try and share my screen and bring it up. Oops, that's the wrong page. Everyone seeing that?
Oh, look at that. Eugenie's house.
Yeah. Eugenie, Ken, and Richard Saunders.
When and where?
In Eugenie Scott's house. I don't know the date.
Yeah. About 7 years ago now. Don't we measure everything before COVID? So
Yes.
I think it was 3 or 4 years before COVID. So
Yeah. So the other two people in the photograph are on the call. They can, I think they can let us know any details that are available. But it looks like everyone's having a great time. So a message from Jeannie says the context for the photo, Ken and Ruth were visiting their daughter in the Bay Area in 2015.
granddaughter,
And
granddaughter.
yeah, and Richard was serendipitously visiting as well. And Ruth took the pic, hence her absence from the photo.
Good. That was a wonderful visit. Great chats.
I can't imagine that group and it not being a wonderful visit. I'll stop the share now.
That was a great photo.
Thanks, Richard.
Very, very nice photo.
But I think one of my earliest encounters with Ken, we got my physics professor, Charlie Moore, to come to New Mexicans for Science and Reason when I found that he was sort of the go-to guy for Project Mogul, which in the early 90s was finally realized to be the source of the Roswell incident. So we got Charlie to come up to Albuquerque and talk about it. And Ken was, really impressed and said, Dave, we've got to get this into print. Would you write an article? And so that was my first big Skeptical Inquirer article. But Ken, would nurture people and get them to put effort into getting these important ideas out there in print for the world to see.
There was one funny science thing that caused Ken pain. Mark, I think, what was the connection with Sandia National Labs and Tombaugh? Was he involved at all with Sandia? Because Ken at some point had interviewed Clyde Tombaugh, the New Mexican who had first found Pluto. And then our dear great Neil deGrasse Tyson tossed Pluto off the planet list. And I remember, I think Clyde had died before that or was very elderly. And all Ken could do was think, oh, poor Clyde. His life's achievement. Oh, poor Clyde.
I don't know if Clyde had a relationship with Sandia, but I did go to a conference in Albuquerque, and I don't remember exactly what it was. I think it was an American Physical Society conference, and Clyde was a special guest, and Sandia may have co-sponsored that. So that would have been in the 80s.
No wonder, yeah. That would have been Ken finding a reason to interview him and have a great chat with him and admired him. And then would shake his finger sometimes at Neil deGrasse Tyson for throwing Pluto out of the planetary hierarchy. Oh, well.
Okay.
I think, one of the, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
One of my enduring images of Ken is him walking his dog Darwin around the neighborhood. Just
Every day.
Yeah. And the pictures. And did he take that picture that you are using, Ruth? Behind you, that's your house. And
that, yeah, that's his picture of our house. Yeah. And then that was his picture of the buffalo. Yeah. And for those of you fortunate enough to live in New Mexico, I go out tonight and watch Mars rising over our Sandia Mountains. Sorry, Leonard. It is so beautiful, and Neptune too. And so the other day, our grandson said, "Graham, do you know those things?" I laughed and I said, "Sleeping with your grandfather for 59 years. Yeah, I've learned one or two things about what's up there." He delighted in New Mexico skies, delighted.
And I found the pictures that Ken would post, whether it be hot air balloons or clouds or sunsets or lightning storms, along with all of the other amazing astronomical things that he would post pictures of. An absolute delight. I'll forgive pictures of clouds.
I don't know if you can see this, but it's a picture that Ken gave me. It's of the Hale Bopp. I mean, he took it and made a lot of copies and probably handed them out, but what a marvel. You can see the double tail on it. It's really, really a neat picture.
Hold
It's
it up.
hanging right here where I see it every day in the computer. Walk in and say, "Oh, that's Ken's."
And it's rising over the Sandias. It's
Exactly.
and you know,
Early in the
Cam,
morning.
hold it up to the webcam. Hold
What's
it
that?
closer to the web. Hold the photo
I
right
can-
up to the webcam where
I
we
gotta
can.
be, well, I gotta be a little careful here because it disappears.
Because it's.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
filtered.
Almost,
I don't know if you can see it. Yeah.
then the,
I guess I should scan it. Shouldn't I back up on the wall? And I'll
Your-
scan it.
your
tomorrow.
virtual background's messing it up.
Yeah, you can just turn your virtual background off.
Oh, yeah. It means I have to
Get
get
a
it.
virtual off.
so that photo that Ken took of Hale Bopp, it appeared in a documentary because when I went to the Libyan desert to shoot this documentary called Tutankhamun's Fireball, the film crew came to me at Sandia afterward, and they wanted to interview me, and they said, "You got to have a bunch of stuff on your desk that we can, use in the film. Get some books and pile them there, and some pictures and stuff." And I had that picture on my wall. And at Sandia, we have these metal walls, so everything's like we stick magnets, So it was really easy to take down. So I put that picture on the table. I put some books there, and I was actually scrolling through that looking for some stuff. I downloaded the video. I have it on my computer, and I remembered, they zoomed in towards my computer, and there was that picture that Kim took of Hale Bopp.
Here's Eugenie. Hi, Eugenie.
Uh-oh.
I'm sorry things are a little crazy around here. We're in the middle of dinner and we've got an almost 3-year-old who just was delighted to have her mommy come home. So there's a lot of background racket. But I just wanted to say how much I missed Ken. I think personally one of the most difficult parts of his passing was the suddenness, because I don't think not very many of us knew that he had this long-term illness. And then very, very suddenly he wasn't here anymore. And for anybody that you lose so quickly like that, I think there's a tendency to have, as my friend Bob Shadowald used to say, the Uda brothers, coulda, woulda, shoulda. You sort of think, oh, I wish I could have said this to Ken. I wish I should have, sent this to him, and I would have done, but then he was gone. And I think a lot of us, all of us, miss him terribly. Wish we had had more time to spend with him, but I think all of us will cherish all of our memories that we have of him. And Ruth, of course. They were such a partnership. So anyway, the hecticness of Wednesday night at the Scott Sager household notwithstanding. Thanks very much, you guys, for NMSR for having this memorial for Ken, because we can't, you can't have too many. We all miss him very much.
Yeah, thanks to everybody for coming. I think Ruth is organizing something on January 8th in person, and everyone's invited. Can you tell us more about that, Ruth?
Oh, I'm happy to, and you are all so invited. It is a celebration of Ken's life on January 8th at a church near our home here up in the Sandias called St. Chad's. Now, St. Chad's is an Episcopal church, and I did a fundraiser for them a year or so ago. And I went in, you guys have influenced me, Leonard, especially you, way too much. And I said, excuse me, but I don't know St. Chad. Was he married to Buffy? And the darling priest said, well, he was a 7th century saint. And he said, you know what he's the saint of? And I said, no. And he said, correct elections. So remember hanging Chads? That's named after St. Chad. So St. Chad's Episcopal Church, Sunday, January 8th from 3 until 5. And it is going to be probably one of the more eclectic ceremonies that anybody has ever seen. As you all know, Ken was not a member of any organized church, and he supported anybody's personal beliefs to a point, unless they tried to get him to donate to their church. But this one is absolutely wonderful, and it's our son's choice, really, to have this church for a very funny reason. It's up close to those mountains, and what Christopher said was, I want anybody who comes to this church to be able to see the mountains the way Dad did. So that's part of it. We are beginning with I asked Ken on our vacation, what do you want from your funeral? Ken and I were very realistic about our not getting out of this next decade alive. The ninth decade that you're in is a tough one to get out of. And Ken laughed at my question about what he wanted for a funeral. And he said, I'm not going to be there. So do whatever you want. So take that, Frazier. You're in an Episcopal church. But one of the things I'm excited about is we will begin with Aaron Copeland's Fanfare for the Common Man. If there was anything Ken Frazier ever would think of himself, it would be as a common man. I think some of us think he did some pretty uncommon and extraordinary things in a lifetime. But first and foremost, he thought of himself as a very ordinary kind of person, very modest. So we're going to have some fun musical things in it. The readings normally are from the Bible. I changed them to be read by 4 of his adult grandchildren, and they're things Ken has written. So the priest went along with that as well. He did pause and tell me he had to do a gospel. And I sent him a couple of biblical things. Of course, I Googled them about stars and the planets and things like that. And so he said, I will use that as a reference point. So I'm delighted. And a catered reception afterwards, and then back here to our house. And it is designed to be like a New Orleans funeral, that we will begin sorrowfully for what we have lost, and we will end in joy for what we have had with Ken Frazier. So I think it might be streamed. The priest is not a total tech. And so he said they've been having trouble with their streaming. But if that doesn't work, I'm going to try to get it on YouTube too, just because I think it's sort of a different kind of celebration than anybody's been to. It is to be hoped.
Dave, you'll remind us of this on email?
Yeah, I'll put out an announcement on the NMSR list. Now that we have details, I can add those.
And wouldn't Ken be excited about the wonderful new fusion news that's out there? Wow, I thought, oh my goodness, that he would have been doing a column so fast for that. So Ben, wow. So it's okay. Let me correct one thing. 20 years ago, Ken had colorectal cancer and was given 10 months to live. And we switched and went to the University of New Mexico's Cancer Center. He was put on a brand new drug, and there were 24 in the group with his oncologist. Ken was the only one who survived out of 24, with an FDA-approved drug that was later, Avastin, taken off the market for colorectal, but it worked for Ken. During that time, he had chemo and radiation. He then developed CLL, chronic, what the C's for, a leukemia. And it was of absolutely no concern for either the oncologist or Ken, because as the head of the cancer center said to us, you will never die from CLL. So he kept it checked. The cancer never came back. Well, it came back, but it was then treated, and he was considered, they don't use the word cured much around cancer centers, but they did say in remission for almost 20 years. In August, Ken developed anemia and went back to his oncologist, as he did every 6 months. And she said, you know, this is not terrific. Let's start some treatments. And Ken said, I'm just leaving on a month-long vacation. I'll check with you when I come back. And when he did, he was extremely fatigued at the beginning of October. And so he went into the oncologist. The first thing she did that afternoon was giving blood transfusion. And on October the 10th, he got the diagnosis that it was not CLL that was causing what was going on with him. It was AML, acute myeloid leukemia. Neil deGrasse Tyson wrote him and said, you know, anything that's called acute is never good. So that diagnosis was given on October the 10th. It was shown that he had a defective gene. As a result, the AML was caused as a result of the chemo and radiation from 20 years ago. And Ken said to the oncologist, you gave me 20 incredible years. I've done everything I wanted to do during these 20 years. I have no hard feelings whatsoever about the fact that the chemo has caused the AML. And he died in 21 days. It was that deadly and that quick. And Ken had a sense of it, I think, because when he heard about the defective gene, that was a very bad day that day. And you saw it in the column when she said, I have news and none of it's good. We called her Dr. Debbie Downer after that. But I think he had a sense, and during the 21 days in the hospital, he had a sense of how bad he felt. But this cancer had no pain involved. He was not terribly comfortable because they had so many antibiotics and stuff, but there was no pain. So his death was totally, completely peaceful. The doctor told me in the hallway, and I said, come tell Ken. And I held Ken's hands while she told him, and I said, Ken, are you afraid? And he said, no. And I said, how do you feel? And he said, relieved. I'm sorry to leave you, but I'm relieved. So that gave me a sense of that Ken had a pretty good sense of exactly how poorly he was feeling. So, and that it wasn't going to get better. And several hours later, he died peacefully with all of us around him. So, thank you to the Cancer Center for 20 incredibly wonderful, good years for Ken.
Thank you for telling us that, Ruth.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ruth.
Sure, a little clarity.
I got one more thing from Richard that I can share. This is a snippet from the Skeptic magazine in Australia.
Oh,
An announcement of Ken's passing.
how sweet. Oh,
Yeah, he's a friend from all over the world.
he's been corresponding with Dick Smith all these years. Wonderful stuff.
And I think we can all thank the Cancer Center for giving us 20 more years of Ken.
Exactly, exactly.
Because it changed our lives too.
Well, good. Well, if any of you can come, or if we stream it, I'll let you know. And if there's a YouTube of the ceremony, I'll let you know. But the way to honor Ken is to continue doing exactly what each of you do so well. And that is to shake your fist at the nonsense that's out there and celebrate the science that's out there, the reason that's out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All righty.
On that note, I think I'll say goodnight.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks to everybody for coming. We will put this up on YouTube in a couple days. The Mark, are you busy next month? January 11th in particular? Because
Well, I'm always busy, but you know,
I was thinking
I will always make time for NMSR events.
we could take on that new Graham Hancock special, The Ancient Apocalypse, and maybe show a few clips from it and see how it's been getting pilloried in the on Twitter and in the media, and Graham
Yeah.
Hancock is furiously wanting people to debate him without too much success, I think.
He tagged me, in fact, as someone he wants to debate on Twitter.
So would you be up for that, Mark? January
I would.
11th?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so I'll get some info out on that for everybody. Thanks to everyone for coming, and maybe see some of you on January 8th in person.
Thank you all. Thank you very much, Ruth.
Thank you, Kev. Thanks for your
Thank you,
nice.
everyone.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the rocky start. I was on the road all day and just one thing after another, and didn't get enough prep time to find out I didn't have an internet connection at my office anymore. So, but we did get it together. So, thanks for bearing with me, and hope to see you in January.
Shalom, everyone.
Okay. All right. Thanks for coming.